It's difficult to say about the future. I mean, some days I'm optimistic and some days I'm not optimistic as far as the record business goes. There's clearly going to be a shift more to the digital download, which is going to change the business model. It already has changed the business model from an album-driven thing, whereas you would hear one or two hit singles and you'd buy the album, which was a larger dollar figure. Now, again, with the democratization of iTunes and everything else, you don't need to buy a whole album by someone. You know, even someone that makes albums to be albums like Bruce Springsteen, you could say, well, I've heard all, I went to the listening kiosk at Virgin and I listened to all the songs, and these are the 5 that I want. So I'll take these 5 and I'll put them with 5 other Bruce Springsteen songs that I have, and I'll make my own album, or not even an album. I'll put them on my iPod, but I'm only going to pay 99 cents for each of the 5 songs. That's assuming you're buying them legally and paying for them, which again is the real where the bottom's falling out, you know, in my answer. But I mean, I think assuming you pay, you don't have to pay for the whole album. You don't got to buy the retail album. Some people still will, and I've read some things recently that baby boomers, again, continue to buy because we were raised that way to buy. But I know that the younger people, you know, a lot of younger people, I've been to some seminars where people would ask a question, raise your hand if you ever bought a CD, and a lot of the younger people never bought, it's not the way they do it anymore. You know, they get it as download. So assuming it's a legal download, you know, even so, you don't have to buy all 12 songs or all 14 songs and pay that full album price. You can just get a few from here, a few from there, a few from there. So it's forcing the record labels to look at it differently as to how they're going to do it. And it's going to eventually force the artists as well. Again, the old-time artists, Stones and Springsteen, are going to continue to do it the way they always did it probably. But the newer artists are going to have to do it in a different way. It's going to be more singles driven. You don't have to wait till you have a whole album. You could put out 4-song EP or whatever you want to call it, or even a single as you make them. But you may put out one every 3 or 4 months because you can just do it that way instead, which is not unlike the way it was in the 50s and early 60s where you just had a single. You put out a record when you had a good record and that was it. The difficulty, I think, the X factor is going to be the illegal downloads, how long that continues for, how long ripping and free copying and free sharing is going to go on, file sharing, you know, to the point where that combined with a more singles-driven business as opposed to an album-driven business is just going to make the bottom fall out to the point where the big record labels just, they say it's just not worth our while. You know, we can't spend the money we need to spend to market a big artist if you're all going to take the music for free. I think that's the thing that people that think, oh, it's music, we should be able to get it for free, you know, don't realize that eventually your choices will be more but not better, because the artist that had the real value, it took money to get there, and nobody's willing to put the money in anymore. So you have a whole lot of choices, but it's rather mediocre stuff that you're getting to pick from because there's no monetary incentive for the artist to create great artwork. And it doesn't mean it always has to be money driven, but if you're going to spend the time, you need to make enough money to have the time to spend. You know, you may have a world where artists aren't full-time recording artists anymore because they can't make enough money doing it. So therefore, you're not going to get, you know, they're not going to make less good music. They're not going to make inferior music on purpose, but it's going to be harder if you can't make the money to free yourself to have the time to make the music. You know, it's kind of a vicious cycle where it'll eventually you may have, yeah, I can choose 50,000 things from MySpace, but I can't find anything that's any good. That would be the catch-22 of the whole I want it all for free scenario, and all copyrights should be for free. And I don't think that some of these guys like Lessig and these guys who are propounding that this is the way it should be, I don't think the courts will go along with it. I don't think the law is going to change to be that way. I think eventually the RIAA and these other people are, you know, they're going to prevail, and people will learn that you do have to pay. You may not have to pay as much as you used to have to pay, but you're going to have to pay something for it. I analogize it to shoplifting. Hey, look, if I have a store and everybody's coming in just taking the stuff for free, eventually I go out of business. So, you know, I have to call in the police to stop the shoplifters. I can't just say, well, I don't want to be calling the police, so I'm just going to let them take all the stuff. I mean, it's not good for anybody. It's not fair to the people who pay to let other people take it for free. And I, as a business owner, I'm going to go out of business. So I don't think that the RIAA is wrong for pursuing the people when they do. Granted, it's weird to be sending out lawsuits to college students. But, if they downloaded 3,000 songs for free, that's a lot of money that people lost on all different levels. So that's what the law says right now, and that's what they're entitled to do, and the courts are backing them up. So, but again, the record label kind of got behind the 8 ball. They didn't work with internet when the internet first came along, and so the internet did an end run around them. And it's difficult to kind of get a harness on it now. I think it's getting better, but overall, every year, the industry has been shrinking, so we'll have to see where that hemorrhaging stops. Well, I think a little bit, when you're talking about an elementary level of education, a little bit the RIAA, when they sue a college student or a high school student, that student, if that student is paying money, it's really coming out of the parent's pocket. So the idea is we're going to lay down the law so that the parents say, Johnny, your little computer thing cost us $5,000, and had the police at our door, stop. You have to obey the law. And again, it's no different than shoplifting. I mean, granted, if Johnny comes home and says, look, Ma, I got a big bag of groceries and I didn't have to pay for it, this is great. But if the police show up and then, are holding the parents liable, the parents say, you know what, it's wrong. Right? They should have said it anyway, but if they didn't before, they will now. I think it's the same concept. You're just trying to get people to understand that, first of all, there's a law, and the laws are there for a reason. And second of all, people make a living from doing this, and you're stealing from them, and it's just not fair. There is a lot of stuff for free on the internet, but there's a lot of stuff you got to pay for on the internet too. So, this is one of those things that, just because you can get it for free doesn't mean it's legal to get it for free. And, it's a tough fight, but I think, gradually over time, hopefully the parents will teach the kids, and then the kids will teach their kids, you know what, do it the right way, because there's a law here. And as long as the RIAA keeps suing people and keeps it in the headlines, enough people will tell their kids, look, I'm letting you on the computer, but I'm giving you iTunes, and I'll give you a certain budget. And I know parents who have told me this is what they do. They say to their kids, you got X amount of dollars, $10 a month to spend on iTunes, I'll give you the prepaid thing. Pick carefully what you want, no different than T-shirts or sneakers or anything else. Decide what you want to buy and buy it carefully, but don't you dare steal the stuff and end up having me get sued, or you get sued and me have to pay $5,000 or $10,000 in settlement to the RIAA for you stealing a bunch of songs you could have bought for $20.